I wanted to say a few things about Squid Game, that new Netflix show that everyone is watching. I just finished it a couple days ago and I have to say that I really enjoyed it. This is not a video review channel, but I was compelled enough to share a few jumbled thoughts on this TV show. Oh, by the way, this one is going to have a lot of spoilers. And I want to give huge props to the talented artist who drew this beautiful illustration for my thumbnail, Squirrel Paparazzi. Go follow them on Instagram at Squirrel Paparazzi. But first, I want to talk about the Asianometry podcast. Well, it's more like an audio feed. I've been told that my videos would make for good listening, so here we go. I don't think the podcast will be as humorous as the videos since most of my jokes are visual, but now you can listen to me ramble while you're headed to work or taking a walk. My mom says that my voice can help put people to sleep. You can subscribe and listen to the Asianometry podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever you use. In an interview with Variety, writer-director Hwan Dong-yuk, and I'm going to ruin a lot of these names, says, I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or fable about modern capitalist society, something that depicts an extreme competition, somewhat like the extreme competition of life. But I wanted it to use the kind of characters we've all met in real life. Hwang drew influences from Japanese works like Battle Royale and Liar Game to write Squid Game, but he found the games in those to be too complicated. So Hwang simplified the games to be kids' games. They were easy to explain, which gave space to develop the characters. Hwang's previous movies reflect the emphasis on character. A while ago, I watched his other film, The Fortress, released in 2017. It depicts a famous historical event, the Second Manchu invasion of Korea. The Manchu leader, Hong Taiji, invaded the Kingdom of Korea, cornering the king and his court at a fortress at Namhan Sangsong. Everyone knows what happens in the end. The Korean king loses his resistance to the Manchu and has to publicly kowtow to Hong Taiji. The event is deeply ingrained in the nation's collective historical memory. But the drama is watching the king's two advisors go back and forth with their own ideas on how to escape the inevitable. This drama between these two forceful and fleshed out characters carried the fortress despite everyone, except me, knowing the ending. And it carries Squid Game as well. People still get hooked to Squid Game despite the simple plot, because plot is not as important as having characters that the audience is invested in. The show does this in three ways. First, Squid Game's main characters are memorable. They have a distinct look, and sometimes even markings to help viewers recognize and remember them. This matters when you have such a large cast. I'm thinking the snake tattoo on gangster Doksu, Ali Abdul's Pakistani identity, or the stud in Ji Young's nose. Second, the characters are not one note. They show different faces and emotions throughout the show. This helps make them feel more human. Doksu, normally arrogant and outwardly confident, feels fear when his underling pushes him to the brink of death at the marbles game. Se-byuk takes care of her little brother and helps Ji-hoon find the first step on the glass ladder, but she also pickpocketed him earlier in the movie and cut up a broker who scammed her. Ji-hoon is the protagonist with a golden heart, but real talk, he's also kind of a trashy guy. He has a gambling problem and hasn't held down a steady job in years. His best friend would not lend him money. Would you? And third, we're shown why each character needs the money. Shown, not told. The show spends as much time with the characters outside and between the games as they do in the games. And as a result, we can really get a sense of their desperation. It makes it that much more terrible as they start dying. Okay, so we have our cast of characters, simple but sweet. The show has dedicated copious amounts of runtime with them so that we may care for their plight and want for them to get what they want. There's a famous piece of writing advice. Make great characters that you care for, and then do awful things to them. You watch them long enough to like them, and then watch them get put through some awful things. One of the unique parts of Squid Game is that it gives us a look into the inner workings of the militaristic machine running the games. In the TV show, the front man confronts a ring of game workers who have managed to set up a little side business, harvesting organs from losing players and selling them to China. They recruited one of the players, a disgraced doctor, to do the actual messy business of harvesting the organs from the quote-unquote donor. And in return, they tell the doctor what the next game is going to be. The frontman says that he does not care whether or not they harvest the organs of dead players. The real sin was that they violated the game's spirit of equality by telling some of the players what the next games would be. The frontman seems like a consummate professional and seems to really value what he believes to be the equality between the game's various players. Outside of the Squid Games, his players are downtrodden, taken advantage of, and defrauded. All those are wiped clean once they step into the arena. In some way, the audience can sympathize with the frontman's desire for equality in some twisted way. Take away all the silver spoons so that we can truly compete with each other as equals to see who really, quote-unquote, deserves the money. Leave it all to chance. Battle Royale style games like the ones practiced in the TV show do not demonstrate skill, capability, worthiness, or desire. It simply chooses a winner. Computer simulations of winners and losers in Battle Royale style games find that results are only weakly aligned with skill. Games have to be simulated multiple times before the most skilled player wins. In one simulation with 100 players, the game will have to be played 500 times to get a 90% chance that the most skilled player can win. Battle Royale is a game of chance. Ji-hun eventually wins the 2020 Squid Games not because he was the best or most skilled, not because he had a heart of gold or showed kindness to the right person. It was because he was lucky. The guy who lost game after game at the start of the show ends up winning the biggest game of them all. Is that okay? How you feel about that, I think, is a reflection of what your own personal values are. Perhaps you can feel at peace knowing that it is entirely out of your hands. Perhaps the idea of that very loss of control is absolutely terrifying. Squid Game, the actual Squid Game itself, is real. Writer-director Huang says, "It is the most symbolic game that reflects today's competitive society, so I picked it out as the show's title. It's a game of haves and have-nots. The people inside the squid start out with the privilege of being able to walk on 2 feet. Those born on the outside of the squid looking in, they have been deliberately crippled. They have to scratch and fight their way into the head of the squid. It ends up a massive, brutal brawl between 2 groups, one trying to keep the other out of their place in the squid." When judged by households, South Korea's income inequality as measured by the Gini coefficient is about average for a developed country. But this is because Korean households tend to have more income earners than that of your average developed country. If you were to look at it on an individual basis, then Korea drops very low on the rankings. The top 10 highest earners in South Korea earn nearly 5 times more than the bottom 10%. That puts it on the same level as the United States. Up until the late 1990s, South Korea had not been so unequal, but in 1998, the Asian financial crisis and the ruling Kim government pushed through a set of new labor laws that would change the way Koreans worked. Tens of thousands of workers lost their jobs, including Squid Game protagonist Ji-hun. It is mentioned that he used to work at a steel factory that eventually laid him off. In the year 1998, 100,000 workers lost their jobs each month. Not all of these laid-off workers found jobs. The lucky ones got hired or rehired by companies as irregular workers on a temporary, freelance, or contract basis. The proportion of irregular workers in the working population increased drastically from 43% in 1996 to 58% in 2000. That number has remained persistently high ever since. Many of these layoffs were older people, which has led to a situation where more than half of South Korea's elderly, 65 plus years, suffers from poverty. And the TV show reflects this, where the mothers of Ji-hun and Sang-woo are both still working despite age and health issues. This is kind of shocking for a country so imbued with Confucian traditions. This is where social safety nets should exist. But South Korea industrialized and aged so fast that they were not able to create and mature one good enough to fully protect the vulnerable. They were one of the last developed countries to add a form of universal health care, instituted in the early 2000s, a decade after Taiwan. Furthermore, as tax rates for the richest members of society have fallen from 70% in the 1970s to 35% in the 2000s, a lack of tax revenues have made implementing new reforms difficult. And for those inside the squid at the start of the game, there is more money than ever. Whether it be CEOs raking in massive stock-based compensation packages, same as in America, or elite graduates of the top chaebol earning nearly twice as much as their comrades, the top earners have been able to earn more than ever. Many of these people have leveraged their high earnings to invest in real estate, becoming yet even richer. Their wealth has benefited from an extended bull market in Korean real estate. FYI, this is a critical difference between themselves and the working poor, borrowing to invest rather than borrowing to consume, something Ji-hun repeatedly does in the first episode. These divides have left South Korea rather polarized, home to some of the highest highs and the lowest lows of society. A challenging socio-economic situation, but at least it makes for amazing art, right? In recent years, various Korean presidents have ascended to power on the back of promises to corral the chaebol and reduce the wealth inequality gap. For various reasons, these have almost all failed. So, if you're in the bottom earning class group with no way out and no hope seemingly coming, then it is possible to believe that existing can be such a hell that you would risk it all for a chance to win it all. In recent years, South Korean art and cinema have been telling really great stories on the themes of wealth inequality and poverty. A few notable examples of this, other than Squid Game of course, have been Old Boy, Oscar winner Parasite, Mother, or Burning. The theme notably appears in Train to Busan as well, where the main antagonist is also a finance/business person. South Korea has had a mixed relationship with big business, long a foundation of their export-led prosperity. I've been thinking about doing a future video about why it has been so hard to reform wealth inequality and the chaebol in South Korea. Let's see if I can finish it. All in all, I really enjoyed Squid Game. It was one of those TV shows that grabbed me from the very start and dragged my busy self kicking and screaming until the end. Thanks for listening to my rambling review, and soon we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. Alright, that's it for tonight. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Check out the newsletter or follow the Twitter. Want to send me an email? Drop me a line at john@asianometry.com. I love reading your emails. Introduce yourself, suggest a topic, or more. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.